Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.
You tend to have expanded conversations with prosecutors. Can you talk a little bit about how you think the prosecutorial wing can help curb this? Second question, there's been criticism even from some members of council that part of the problem is we don't have and can't retain enough police officers in Savannah to deal with this problem. So also, what do you say about that?
Well, I think I'll start with the latter first. The latter is that the uninformed thought that police officers stop crime, and that's just not true. The fact of the matter is you can have a police officer on every single corner and you still won't prevent crime. The issue really is about decisions that people make. Again, we've had officers in the vicinity. We've had officers to witness parts of crimes being committed, and they could not stop the crime. I think the more important number is the 90%, particularly with violent crimes and homicides, our clearance rate that we're solving them. So I think the thought that we have to hire more police officers creates a police state that none of us want.
It's the same people talking about we don't need more officers that are calling in. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of putting stress on the system. This is like the same. This is like how we're arguing about how SCAD needs to pay something into the system. Do you think their students aren't calling for service? You think their students aren't calling 911 guys?
Yeah.
That's our police going. We're paying for that. They're not paying for it.
And the tourists who got a flat tire. Now you're calling the police department and they're coming out to change tires and do all that stuff, which is what cops have been doing since, the beginning of time. But now it's a big Facebook fad to put pictures on. Oh, he gave a homeless guy a sandwich. Oh, he stopped on the side of the road to help change a tire. Oh, he's
played some basketball with some kids. Yeah.
That's just what cops do.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
John?
Hey, Chuck.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's episode 80. Can
80.
you believe it or not? We've already hit number 80, John. We got a large live audience carrying across multiple platforms tonight, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We appreciate all of you joining us. We are in the midst of primary season, and we do have more candidate interviews coming up in the future. But suffice to say this week, John, that we were a little caught off guard. For those of you who don't know, we've had this organization for 2 years, working on better public policy outcomes here at the local and state level for Savannah and Chatham County. And so we have a lot of ways people get in touch with us. And a lot of people send us stuff, direct messages. Hey, this is going on. Hey, this is going on. Did you hear about this? Will you cover this? We get a lot of random emails and messages. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Absolutely.
And so, sometimes it's nothing.
And we welcome that. We welcome
absolutely. That. Sometimes it's just a small story or a very, district focused issue in a part of the county or the city. But once in a while, we get something and it's really real. And we got our hands this week a survey results. What is the official title of this, John?
It is the Continuous Improvement Survey by the Human Resources Department of the City of Savannah, and it's 100 and almost 60 pages.
Right. This is a large document. The dog agrees it's an important document, guys. Okay. So we have spent the last couple days trying our best to synthesize this. A couple of others got their hands on it as well. Our friends over at the Savannahian.com have a very good write-up along with the attachment. And if you go to our Facebook page right now, okay, our most recent post right below the video is a Google Share Drive link where you can access the document yourself. Now, I texted you earlier in the day, John. Today is
Daniel Ellsberg's birthday.
Today is the birthday of Daniel Ellsberg. It's a little ironic. It feels to me that, we are kind of pushing this document out to the public. And our guest, that's going to come on in just a few minutes was on. I showed a clip earlier. That was episode 55, John. Wow. That the episode's title was How to Save a Police Department's Life. And so that was in the wake of those 70 officers signing a letter that went to the city manager's office, the council, the mayor's office, and it became public and was publicly reported on, basically calling for leadership change in the department. And so now we're going to kind of take a look and see what does that look like 15 months on. So I know that you took the lead on this for us for the group, John. Do you want me to bring in Kevin now, or do you want to make some more observations on the top here?
I want to frame this up for our viewers.
Please.
A little bit more information. This continuing improvement survey is something I am told that the city management is going to institute and conduct with multiple departments. I don't know how deep and wide, but it wasn't intended for the police department. They just happened to start with the police department. So this sort of in-depth analysis and surveying will probably get replicated into sanitation and parks and recreation and other departments. But back to context here. Number one, this was an internal study. The letter that you referenced from a couple of years ago was an external thing. This is internal. 255 police officers and staff responded to the survey anonymously.
And that represents about 50% of what we believe to be the active duty number of officers right now. That active duty number is like always shifting up and down.
Pretty close. What I'm
you'd
saying
say it's a good sample size.
Absolutely. It's like when we were looking at the Tybee irregular voter deal, when we got to 55% auditing, we said that we've got enough to vet and sustain our research. So what I'm saying is this is a internal survey. The real question that runs throughout it is, hey, what is your current view of the condition of the Savannah Police Department? And multiple questions. We'll run a bunch of slides, show the data on many of the fields. And secondly, what would you do to improve it? So it's kind of a two-part survey question. Where are we at right now, and what can we do better? Kind of a classic HR survey, which is fine. So having said that, why don't you introduce our guest, and we'll start looking at some of the data.
Absolutely. Well, again, like I said a little bit earlier, this is the second time on our show, back on episode 55. Like I said, right after that group of officers put that letter out, we had Kevin Grogan on. He is the author of Black Sheep, White Cop. Kevin was a member of the Expo unit during the 2000s and a little bit before. Here in Savannah, a long time kind of commentator after his career ended. And he's got a new forthcoming book coming out called Ruffian, with the foreword by Chris Bayless from the ATF. So, we found that his frank and, really raw experience to be invaluable in these discussions, because we don't really get to hear from a lot of former police officers because they're generally still working. They're generally in another department somewhere else. And so they may not be in a position to speak as candidly. If you go back and watch episode 55, you'll see there are some clear disagreements. We don't agree on everything, but this is a crisis of public safety emanating from this police department. It calls for us to go beyond some of our differences and find solutions that we can reach on common ground. We were literally just talking about that in the green room. So without further ado, I'm just going to welcome Kevin into the show. Kevin, Mr. Grogan, it's a pleasure to have you back. How you been? How was the writing of the book? And let's get into it.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. The fact that anybody listens to anything I say is, appreciated. But, I think that is because of it's a very candid approach. And like you said, Chuck, I can say things that guys working on the street can't in fear of reprisal and, politics and that kind of stuff. But, I have since leaving the department in 2014, kept my fingers very much on the pulse of what goes on, not only in the police department, but in the streets of Savannah. So, I do a lot of consulting work with defense attorneys, and, I see the cases that are happening, listen, and always keep my ear to the street.
Excellent. You mentioned earlier, Kevin, that surveys are not something new at the department, but I haven't read any prior surveys, but having read almost all of this, and by the way, this is what 160 pages looks like. I mean, it is.
I'm sure they're pretty pissed that it's out and in your hands, John.
Well, we would have open records requested it one way or another. It just so happens that three independent people who don't know each other came to us and said, "Hey, have you seen this? Check it out." So it's out. It's amazing to me. I called a contact on city council. It has not been shared with council, Kevin.
Hey, John, just an update, just a quick update here on this note, John. Our friends at the Savannahian did open records request and receive confirmation both on the report itself, but also on the email chain that we had discussed
Okay.
between Chief Minter and the department, which I'm sure we'll get into. So I will say that a news organization which has an article up, again, it's the Savannahian.com. It's $5 a month, well worth the subscription cost. All right, if you want to get a really good write-up that's from a professional journalist. But they open records requested it and did get from the PIO, the Public Information Officer, confirmation on all of this stuff. So this is 100% verified. We're not making any of this up. This happened. This was given out, and we need to talk about it. Go ahead, John.
Well, Chuck, reading the data and the narrative, because there's two types of questions or results in the study. One is a bar graph of either dissatisfied or satisfied on a specific question, and the other is a narrative style of commentary. So personally, I find it astoundingly negative, and I don't know how they can avoid this or spin this or deal with this. Now, I understand the chief, when he sent it out to all employees, his message, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, is we know this is hard information to hear, but we're going to act on it. We're going to implement systems and protocols to fix things. There was no hiding or discrediting in Chief Minter's email about the report. He confronted it and acknowledged it as damaging. So I'm wondering why City Council hasn't gotten a copy yet, and it was disseminated 8 days ago to the 600 plus employees of the police department. Anyway, having said that, how do you want to tackle some of this data, Chuck?
Oh, I'm just showing people here on our page. This is the link to the complete survey. You can download it. It's if you want to follow along while we're kind of going through on this episode. But
it's enlightening.
do you want to start just really at the very top of the document, or do you want to ask Kevin his overall thoughts first?
Well, let's ask Kevin his thoughts because he's read the report. Am I correct, Kevin?
Uh-oh.
Kevin, you there? Okay, we got a technical problem. Yeah.
Oh no.
Maybe this will refresh for us.
Oh, they really don't want us to have this episode, huh? What's wrong with your internet, Kevin?
Okay, well, until Kevin comes back live,
Right.
Why don't you put up?
Sure. Let's just throw the whole document up on here.
Pick any slide.
Oh, you want to talk about the slides you sent me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, let me go through these here.
In no particular order, but I'll make a comment after we've looked at 2 or 3 of them and talked about them.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Question is, am I satisfied the leadership of the Savannah Police Department command staff?
I'm sure he's messaging us to come
Yeah,
back
he
in.
said lost signal.
Yeah, he'll get back in a second. We'll get him back in a minute, guys.
Okay. So I am satisfied the leadership of Savannah Police Department command staff, lieutenant and above. And I kind of crunched these numbers myself. And basically, if you take the
Slightly to extremely, yeah.
Right. If you take the extremely dissatisfied, moderately dissatisfied, slightly dissatisfied, you have 60.3% of all Savannah police officers are dissatisfied with their command staff, their leadership. To me, that's a problem.
Sure.
60%. That's a nice win in an election. That's almost a mandate. That says something.
It's like how only 9% of people approve of Congress.
Right.
It's definitive.
Put up another command staff slide.
Oh God. I don't have them labeled. Let's see here. That's training.
We can take this one. This is training. I am satisfied with the level of training provided to me to assist in succeeding at my job. I mean, look at that extremely dissatisfied bar at the bottom. Now, this isn't quite as dreadful as the last survey question, but it's still not good. 53% of all Savannah Police Department officers are dissatisfied with the training that they receive to succeed at their job.
Yeah. This is the communication from leadership.
Right. Yeah. Now, listen, in any organization or marriage or relationship, communication is critical. And it says, am I satisfied with the communication provided from command staff? Meaning down the line. And here you have 65, basically rounded up, 66% of Savannah police officers are dissatisfied with communications from their command staff.
Sure. All right, let's see if we can get Kevin back in here. Can you hear us, Kevin?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm telling you that the powers that be don't want this to be successful. So
the conspiracy theorists are firing away, huh?
Yeah.
So we were just going over a couple of the first slides about the communication, the trust in leadership, lieutenant and above, and the training.
Guys, that's, I come from a little club. My background, I joined a little club called the United States Army, so I understand bureaucracy at its finest. The police department's no different than that, and communication is always going to be an issue from top to bottom. From your newest trainee, recruit, patrolman, all the way up to the chief. That communication, there's a lot of things that get in the way. But all the things that I've seen in this survey, there's nothing in there that shocks me at all.
Well, you're an insider. We're like the general public that listens to the equivocation that says that we don't have a crime problem that's that bad, or it's happening across the country, etc. Okay. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I am satisfied the leadership of the Savannah Police Department command staff. So are they satisfied with the leadership coming from the command staff? 60.
John, you got to understand, what was it, 15 months ago that we sat down and we talked about 77 officers to include high-ranking, members of the command staff. They told us almost 2 years ago. They told us what the problems were, and so here we are sitting here like it's a surprise, and it's not. Exactly what they said was the problem came to fruition.
Kevin, I agree 100% with you that this is an old story returning, but I do want to point out that this is a city internal study, whereas two years ago that was more of an external, what could be perceived as dissident or rogue or fussy officers. This comes.
I think if you don't know the police department, you could see it that way. But being intimately familiar with the inner workings of it, I don't think that's the case. That petition could have gone.
That's why you're here. You knew the inside for a long time. We don't. We've never been inside. We're just evaluating the data points and drawing, dumb conclusions as laymen, for lack of better words.
No, and the thing is, none of it's dumb. But you got to understand. So anytime something like this comes out in any bureaucracy, okay, in the Army we call them sensing sessions, and at the police department they hand out these surveys and that kind of stuff. And like you guys alluded to, or we're talking about earlier, your sample size is almost 50%, maybe if not more. So it's a very good sample size to think that this survey that you're getting is accurate. And you can tell from the comments, if you read the whole thing, they're not pulling any punches.
Well, Kevin, my fifth grade teacher said that there's no such thing as stupid questions, just stupid people asking questions. So, just consider us stupid people asking questions, right? Because we're not from the inside of any police department. We would never really know. But this slide, I think, says a lot. 72% of SPD employees are dissatisfied with transparency from command staff. And so this is generally lieutenant and up. We were really saying it's really above lieutenant, right?
Yeah, your command staff, you have lieutenants that command units and that kind of stuff, but the real command, the power structure is from captains above. Captains, majors, your assistant chief, and your chief. Your assistant chief is just a major who's been a little bit appointed to handle operations, while your chief handles, the political side of things.
All right, give us another slide, Chuck.
Let's see here.
There's a couple with a red asterisk in the corner.
Yeah, I got you. No, I'm coming.
All right. And after this slide, we'll have a little discussion. Okay, the Savannah Police Department is staffed adequately for each person to succeed in his or her or their job. Whoa,
88%.
Look at that bar graph. Look at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, that's telling. And guys, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so.
Okay.
And about 5 years ago, I wrote Black Sheep, White Cop, Savannah Exposed. A lot of people thought it was just about proactive policing, but I'm telling you, what's happened in this country is, the attitude towards police officers and the perception of police officers has changed to where they're, the bad guys. The thing is, when you treat people like that from City Hall through your chief, and you treat the officers in your department that way, you're going to lose them. Okay. And when you lose them, what you lose is the experience, and you lose the ability to effectively combat crime in a city. And that's where we are now. That's exactly where we are. We're at a breaking point where the entire culture of the police department needs to change.
Well, in reading through it, tell me if you agree with this. I would say there were at least 15 or 20 comments, respondents, people in the department that said, we're losing officers at a faster rate than we can replace them. Did you gather that in the commentary? Would you agree?
I gather that, and I've seen, Chief Mentor speak about it. I've seen the mayor talk about it, and I got to be 100% candid and say I trust nothing about the numbers that come out of that police department or City Hall, neither in regards to crime statistics that are happening now, and especially not personnel in the police department.
Well, we were talking right before going live, and I think you referenced the WSAB news report of a couple of days ago that essentially pointed out that there's been a 21% increase in shootings in Savannah from the first of the year till now compared to last year. 21%
compared to the same time frame of last year. Yeah, right. And we had a city councilman get on the news and say we don't have a crime problem. Well, first of all, my objection to that is 68 people shot in 3 months is a real crime problem. 86 people shot in that same time period a year later is an extraordinary crime problem. And the fact that we're not admitting that and doing something about that is scary, and it's sickening, and it's disheartening. And I don't blame the police officers that are out there trying to do everything they can with what they have now for that increase. I blame their chief and City Hall for not stepping in, a long time ago, get rid of this guy and give them what they need.
Right. Thanks, Chuck. This quote from an officer is spot on to what we're talking about. Adding more officers should be first. We hire new people, but we lose officers faster than we can hire them. That's such a sobering comment and it doesn't have a lot of hope in it because the trend is not a good trend.
Well, and I think that's an accurate statement, and not to make you feel any worse, but here, let me let you feel worse. All right. You know, you take a citizen, a civilian, put them through police training, put them on the road, and they're not police officers until several years later. They are not effective in their ability to do things. And of course, there are people who learn faster than that. But just the experience of being out there and learning how to actually be a cop, it used to be said 7 years. It takes 7 years for you to really be a police officer. I think that's somewhat accelerated in the city of Savannah because of all of the things that you're exposed to. I mean, if you're a police officer in Savannah, you're going to see it. In my estimation and my not so humble opinion, it's the best city in the country to police. You can learn so much, see so much, do so much. And the fact that we're losing police officers because of morale issues, when you can go out, if you really want to be a cop and do this job in Savannah, if you can't
do it anywhere, I mean, if you can do
keep
it here.
people here, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, no wonder other departments are so happy to take our officers. They're fire tested and hardened in a very short amount of time.
They see it all, and if they have been trained by some of the guys that are still left and some of the girls that are still left, then they're coming with an extensive amount of experience in a short period of time.
Right, Chuck, can you put that last slide back up? I just want to riff on it for a minute about the toxic environment. I mean, this was strong language.
The atmosphere of the SPD is toxic beyond belief. The entire place is understaffed, overworked, underpaid, and living in denial.
Ouch.
There you go. I tell you what, let's take a little break because we've touched on how short-staffed we are, and we've talked about the dissatisfaction and the trust levels of command staff versus rank and file. Chuck, play that seafood video for Kevin.
I mean, this is like such a serious thing here. We played this a couple of weeks ago on the show, Kevin, and we are a policy and politics show. So policy and politics, they just really have an intersection. So let me see if this is
right. Savannah Mayor Van Johnson.
Oh no, that's not the right. Where did I put it? Here it is.
About to raise some hell up in here. Money. And so I'm gonna call the police. I'm gonna call everybody. And y'all can call it what y'all want to call it. The only reason why I call it, it's not petty, because people complain about the store all the time.
Yes, ma'am.
They give people tainted stuff, but if they could do me like that, they do everybody like that. I'm going nowhere. I want my money. I'm about to have a community project on this corner right here. I'm about to call all my friends and do some lifestyle stuff, because that's what they do. I just want my receipts back.
Okay. Let me go find out.
And tell them I want my food that I paid for back too. I'm up here raising hell about my money. This raggedy salt stuff that they give people all the time and won't give a refund with receipts.
Just put it on the floor in there.
Y'all stick around here till she leave.
It's hard to not just be aghast there, right?
Let's take a deep breath. What you saw was City Council member Linda Bryan calling 911 for assistance in getting a refund for some food that she didn't care for. Total waste of manpower. Did we need 3, a supervisor and 2 officers responding? What's your take, Kevin?
You know what? That's the first time I'm seeing that, and I'm horribly disheartened by that. You know, I'm a fan of Linda Wilder Bryant. You know, and she and I have had long, drawn out conversations about. I like her vision for crime in the city, but that right there is an abomination. First of all, it's a civil matter. It's not a police issue. You know, police officers don't deal with refunds and customer satisfaction at a thing, especially at a location where, if I'm not mistaken, 2 people were murdered there not so long ago. You know, bigger fish to fry. But tying up police officers for civil issues, it's absurd. And I'm sure the only reason.
Officers, yeah.
No, and the thing is, 3 officers going. I guarantee you, that's a show just because of the position. You know, she called, probably identified who she was, so of course the sergeant's going to go and make.
And
sure
actually, John, let's be honest with our viewers. We don't even know if she called 911. I mean, it's possible she just called the precinct commander directly. You know, being an older person. I mean, you know. Now I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't really know. She could have called 911.
I'd feel a little better if 911 was not used, because again, what a waste of resource and time, and that's obviously not an emergency.
Well, to be fair, we don't know. But the officer responding, she said, I called you, and they said, yeah, we know, we got the call. How can we help you? So it got communicated, whether it's the non-emergency number or the 911 number. But anyway.
But I'll say this: having been in a similar situation many moons ago, you know, the thing is, you can't just scrap that call. You have to go, and even though you know it's a civil issue, you have to bring it to a resolution as professionally as you can. And from
unless you want to be in the chief's office Monday morning.
No, and especially with this chief. Ooh, Lord. But let me tell you this. You know, from what I saw, the conduct of the officers and the sergeant there, you know, entirely professional, exactly what I expect from the Savannah Police Department and their members. Agreed.
Okay. Hey, I just want to make a statement before we continue with data points. And this is what I wrote down. Let's be clear, the understaffed Savannah Police Department is a very long-standing problem going back to Otis and Edna's administrations at least. It's not exclusively Van Johnson's problem. He inherited it. Okay. What is undeniable? I'm almost done. What is undeniable is it never sees core improvements. The police department grinds up new officers and drives away many career officers. This is not a Van Johnson charge, except for the fact that he's not discussing it. And he's doing nothing different than Eddie or Edna or Otis, and that's
not a new problem.
To quote fictional President Jackson Evans from the movie The Contender, he's not guilty but responsible. You know, like, I mean, I don't blame Van. You know, I don't blame Van Johnson for this crisis. We're going to talk about some other aspects of this in a minute with the case backlog again. You know, that we've been harping on here too. I don't blame this district attorney either. We have a convergence of multiple crises, right? There's only 5 Superior Court judges. We lost Walmsley for a year to the Arbery trial. We had COVID back up the courts. The Supreme Court shut everything down. You know, there's just so many variables out there that are driving this crisis, but nobody is talking about it. So the shirking of the responsibility, I think, is our problem. It's not that we blame any one decision from any of these political leaders, but there has to be some type of come to Jesus moment about public safety in Chatham County. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, what's more important than public safety?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That's number one.
And here's the thing: none of the other systems work if we're not safe in our own community. All right, and that's a huge problem. Like you said, it's not a new problem. Staffing issues are going in any agency, okay, especially a large agency, a paramilitary agency, you're going to have staffing issues. The current state of things, you know, the mass exoduses that continues to happen of your quality and experienced officers has been exacerbated by the current chief. This guy for 3 years has terrorized his command staff and his subordinates, all the way from they have no idea what to expect from discipline. You know, case in point, Sergeant Mike Arango and Corporal Daniel Kang. That police chief not only turned on his guys who policy-wise and professionalism, it was a big issue. Yeah, I get that. But the recommendation from the command staff was suspension, which I, having seen the whole thing, and I can't get into the details of it because it's still an open case. However, having seen it, the suspension was absolutely appropriate. Termination, I think, was excessive, but pushing it to a district attorney to indict as a crime is a crime in itself.
In an election year. In an election year.
Yeah, and absolutely nothing. And of course, he did it with the former district attorney, who is a political machine and would do anything to further a narrative to show, look how hard we are on cops. Okay, but the thing is, it's unjust. You can't put politics before justice. You know, and I digress with that a little bit. But the problem there now, currently, is our chief, and he needs to go. We said it 2 years ago. You know, Alderman Curtis Pertee, when there was a quote unquote mass shooting in Fred Wessel's housing project right there on East Broad Street, he called together the community. We had a meeting at Georgia Southern. We all sat down, and I called for the chief's jobs then. But he still sits there. His contract has been up since August, and yet they keep him there, and he has absolutely destroyed a police department that was already in shambles. Lumpkin was brought in to fix the corrupt culture, the quote unquote the perceived corrupt culture that was going on in the police department. Well, they accused Willie Lovett of running an organized crime ring at the top of the police department. Well, you got Chief Lovett.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. He wasn't just accused; he was convicted by a jury of his peers. I mean,
not of organized crime. However, he was convicted of gambling.
Yes.
Okay, but he was not convicted of running a organized crime ring. But that was what he was on trial for, and that's was what the perception of people were. And I won't get too much into that, other than to say the police department is already suffering. So why did you hire a guy from Arizona that comes from a city that only had 3 murders in it? How would he have any idea how to combat violent crime? Okay, 3? He has none. And he's
Peoria, Arizona. Yeah, Peoria, Arizona.
Yeah, the quote unquote second safest city in the state of Arizona. All right, I can make a phone call right now. Call 5 of my favorite criminals in Savannah, who I keep in contact with, mind you. I could send them out to Peoria, Arizona. Give them 3 weeks. Won't be the safest city in Arizona anymore. I guarantee you that.
Well, what I want to know, Kevin, is, given the way that was handled, am I right in thinking that it is a strategy for public consumption to come down hard or excessively hard on someone, to then be able to say, it's like a trophy, look what we've done? Is that part of the motivation?
Speaking from vast amounts of experience with that, yeah, look, we can show how hard we are on this, but the thing is, going after cops is easy. You know why? Because cops will tell you what they've done, and they will admit to wrongdoing in a heartbeat. I went into internal affairs and told them all of my wrongdoings, and then they made up some more. And that wasn't the city, that was the district attorney. But the same thing's happening in the Arango and Kang case. Of course, Kang not being indicted for crimes, but Sergeant Mike Arango was and is currently awaiting trial for that. But that's all a show. It's like, look how hard we are, but you're ignoring the 21% increase in shootings in the city. Like, that's no big deal. All right. You go after the political thing and show people something shiny, and they forget about what the real problem is. And that's what's happening right now.
Well, Kevin, again, I want to get to the root problems before we start talking about solutions, right? We're budgeted for 624 officers on this budget. We have 530 on staff right now as we speak. We're 90 something officers down. You know,
and
you do that calculation. Let me finish here, Kevin. We do that calculation of police per 1,000 served. The average for a city our size is supposed to be 3.4 per 1,000, right, John? Well, isn't that the goal? That's supposed to be the goal. We're at 2.1 officers per 1,000 district residents served. How are we supposed to ever keep the crime down or even start community policing when we're that far off?
You can't. You don't have it's a physics problem, Chuck. And I think we're at 2.5. We're just a few decimal points above a rural Wyoming police department. Okay, that's what rural, distant, relatively quiet communities have as a staffing level, and we don't have that luxury. There's too much going on here. This is an intense, complicated, savaged service community that is hard as hell. Kevin told us earlier, man, you come to Savannah as a rookie and cut your teeth here. That's real experience that translates everywhere
to higher dollars elsewhere.
Yeah. So what did you want to say, Kevin? I'm sorry.
But guys, I don't think so. I don't think it's so much a money issue. It's a service issue. All right. Cops are not in this business for money. Yeah, you need to be compensated, and you'll have some people asking for better pay, and that's it. But the issue is we don't have enough police. Even if we were at fully staffed, it's still not enough to cover a city this size. But if we were fully staffed now, which we are not, and I think the numbers are much worse. I think it's actually much worse than what is being reported. But, you overwork people. They're working 12-hour shifts. They're getting drafted to stay into the next shift. They're going, they're trying to make ends meet, working off duty, doing all these things, that the wear and tear of that, it doesn't take long to crack. I folded under that pressure myself. So I completely understand that. However, you opened up this show with a segment of the mayor who, people get pissed at me for saying it, but I'm actually a Van Johnson fan. He's done a lot for the community that I've seen him do personally. I also know that when Van is correctly informed on what's going on, he usually steps up and takes the appropriate action. But I think he's taking advice on policing from a wrong source, because his police chief is horribly out of his depth. But when our mayor said you can have a cop on every corner and it won't prevent crime, you know what? I don't disagree, because trust me, I've seen drug deals in the middle of the street at noontime in the highest patrolled neighborhood in the city. And the drugs still go on with the police presence. However, I have to add, if you have the staffing where you can employ proactive policing strategies that work to reduce crime, then the number of cops you have is very important, and you need those numbers in order to employ those strategies. Because without them,
I got you.
With the staffing,
it's reactive. It's constantly reactive.
We might as well be a fire department reacting to 911 phone calls and going putting the fires out. Crime doesn't work like that. Crime is a very fluid thing. Happens all day long. People think, oh, it only happens at night. It only happens in bad neighborhoods. Bullshit. The thing is, it happens right downtown, and you go, and for the longest time, the thing that pisses me off and is our city council and the members, their big thing is, if you see something, say something. Okay. And the mayor is bragging about clearance rates and the homicide rate, too late. People are already dead. They're already shot. You can have it on camera, but it's too late. You've done nothing to prevent it. but the number of police officers that we have is directly related to the crime rate. Okay. We don't have enough cops to do the job. You don't have enough cops to employ these correct strategies. And now the sad and scary part is we don't have the experience in the police office, in the police department to employ those strategies. You know, in the old, you know, war horses that are still there, they're just clutching, holding on to their retirement, hoping not to get in any trouble from this tyrannical chief that still runs the place.
Gotcha. Kevin, I got to ask you straight up, we've never had enough staff and the right staff to really do community policing. But what I want to know from you, who has, you know, it was a career, do you believe in community policing?
My answer is twofold on that. We have had enough staff to do community policing. You can always police. You're in the community. If you're there, you can do it. And do I believe in it wholeheartedly? All right. This new book, you know, that you guys very kindly put out there, it is about a community-based and intelligence-led operation, but it was a long-term proactive strategy that we employed. But you cannot effectively police a community if you do not involve the community, if you don't take care of what the community's needs are, whether they're perceived needs or their actual needs. All right. You go out and you get the drug dealers and you get the trigger pullers and you get them too, but you also have to address the quality of life issues, you know, and you have to be present in the neighborhood in order for people to trust you. Because if you don't show people that you care about more than just kicking in doors and putting people in jail, if you don't show them that you care about more than that, if you don't actually care about the community, then you will not be effective. And the whole see something, say something, come forward and give us information. The community in Savannah, and pardon my language for this, anytime I ever went to anybody on a shooting scene and said, hey, man, tell me what happened, their response invariably was, fuck you, do your job.
Well, all right. So I know that you said those comments about Van, but I just want to put this one up on the screen because I think the elephant in the room in this conversation is the fact that there is a golden goose in downtown Savannah that lays a lot of golden eggs for a lot of business people. You'd agree with that, right, Kevin?
I do.
You know, the tourism district downtown, that's a lot of money to be made down here. Okay? And protecting and protecting that ability to make that money is always seems to be a priority. So this slide up on the screen, again, for those of you listening, we're trying to read out as much of this for the podcast listeners that'll listen to this tomorrow. The officers are attempting to meet astronomical expectations put forth by city council, the chief, mayor, and command staff. And I take that to mean we have to protect the downtown historic district for tourists and business owners and somehow keep the rest of the city safe, all while being 100 officers down from the budgeted number at least. And oh, by the way, even if you happen to arrest a serious criminal, if it's their first offense, you know, their case is likely to get thrown on this pile of backlog criminal cases at the district attorney's office, which again, not Shalina Cook-Jones's fault personally, right? This was a trend coming in when she came into office. It's just worse now, you know? Okay. You might very well arrest a defendant for a serious offense and they'd be right back out on the street a week later. I mean, so when we ask about demoralization of the police officers, the rank and file, right? I know that it's going to be in your book forthcoming in May, but we bring this example, the example of Alderwoman Linda Wilder Bryant, you know, using her position and privilege to gain police resources. How demoralizing is it? Because it must seem like just an impossible task to the average rank and file officer. It's impossible to keep this city safe with all of these variables out there.
There's a lot of things, and City Hall and City Council shouldn't be in the way of the police department doing anything. We need a strong police chief who will lead his department and say, look, crime is our problem. We're going to go out and solve crime. I think every project that gets put in place in the city going here, and that's to include the Board of Education. That's to include, everything to do with jobs and bringing jobs to this community, all needs to have a violent crime nexus. We need to focus on what can we do in this aspect. How do we get these guys off the street and get them employed doing something else so they're not out shooting people? But that's not a police problem. That is a city and community problem.
It's a policy problem. And let me interrupt you. Brunetta Lanier, for years, long before she got elected to the 1st District, has advocated for community benefit agreements that basically, Kevin, mandate local jobs for local people. Okay. She has not been able to pass that. Now, we probably will all agree that poverty and the socioeconomic, as Stacey Fuller just pointed out, are the root causes of all this dysfunction and crime.
And lack of education, absolutely.
Exactly. So Chuck and I were talking about school board issues and candidates this morning, and the reason that we have so many failing students is because they're coming from poverty households, and no school board president has ever used the bully pulpit to say to the business community in this town, you've got to help us. We need higher wages. We need families to be a family, and they can't when they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to get by. So that's all I got on that. I'm
no huge social issues to accompany the thing, but as far as disheartened police officers going, here's the thing about the city of Savannah, and I hate to say this because I love this place. I'm from Connecticut originally. I was in Savannah for 3 hours and said, look, I'm never leaving this place. I wrote this book, and they've asked me to leave several times, but here I am still spitting it. Here's the issue. Okay. So forever, you couldn't say the word gang in Savannah. Then the Coastal Empire Fairground shooting happened in 2013. Willie Lovett and Meg Heap got in front of the courthouse and said, okay, we have gangs. We're going to make them a priority. So from 2013, 14, 15, 16, the crime rate kept going. Okay. But people still come to Savannah. The tourism dollar still comes in.
Sure.
SCAD enrollment is not affected. Okay?
Right.
So guess what? Now City Hall doesn't put any pressure on the police department anymore because the crime rate doesn't matter if people still come. All right. Until someone affluent, or if you have a Jennifer Ross type murder, that's what people get shocked about, stuff like that. If it's just poor black kids getting killed in Savannah, I hate to say it, but City Hall doesn't care.
Well, I'll tell you, my pet peeve is instead of the mayor and council, particularly his side of the aisle, if they would be honest with us and own up to the shortage, the chronic shortage at the department, the attrition of institutional knowledge in the ranks, if they would be honest and say, this is a huge problem and we are going to address it, I would be a lot happier than I am with the equivocation, the spin, and the misdirection.
It's a national problem. No, everybody's short of officers.
Not like this. Not like this.
We're solving our homicides. You can't put a police officer on every corner. I mean, they, you know what? They could say all that, but I want them to say what's really going on, which this survey crystallizes, confirms, and solidifies that we've got a horrific attrition rate. We're understaffed. They're overworked. The stress levels are through the roof. And 50% or more of the department does not like the chief. They don't trust him.
It has nothing to do with like.
Well, what's the right word for it?
Like you said, trust. And the thing is, they fear him. They don't have any respect for the man. They're not going to go out and risk their necks because, when I was a cop, the only thing I had to worry about was coming home safe, coming home alive. These guys have to worry about going out, doing their jobs effectively, exactly what they're trained to do. And God forbid they ever have to do what nobody ever wants to do and kill somebody. They'll be indicted and prosecuted. Now, I got to say this. Van Johnson addressed the city today and talked about, because we've had 3 officer-involved shootings very recently, which is completely
since December.
Completely out of character for this city. All right. But rather than where for a couple of years there, we were like, oh, transparency, show us all. We want to get to the bottom of this. They're killing people. This time they've said, look, GBI's looking at it. We're collecting the facts. We're doing the investigation. And I was happy to hear the mayor say that, because these shootings, it's a horrible situation, but nobody on that police department wants to be put in that position because they do not trust what Chief Minter's reaction is going to be. And again, even his command staff doesn't know what to do, because they'll recommend disciplinary action and he'll take it upon himself outside of policy and operate under what he calls draft policies to do whatever the hell he wants. And, people can't function like that.
Okay, so we got the wrong guy at the top of the police.
Yeah, let's. I want to shift the end of this episode to solutions, Sean, because I think it's fair. A lot of people were complaining like, "Oh, you guys are just going to complain about stuff," Well,
there's a lot.
Can't wait to hear some ideas on proposed solutions. So let's agree from the top that the number one is we need new leadership at the department. The rules on council were changed in 2019. It takes 5 votes to get an executive session called. 5 members of city council can call an executive session and tell Jay Melder to fire this police chief. It's that simple. That is the lever of government. The fact that there are not 5 members of council willing to call that executive session shows you how ironclad the mayor's control on his majority is. You got members of council like Curtis Pertee and Dietrich Leggett and Linda Walter Bryant who have voted 99.999% of the time with the mayor. Okay? You got people in Congress that don't even vote to that type of margin with their political leader on their side of the aisle. Okay?
Nobody can agree that much.
Yeah.
There's no Joe. Where is the Joe Manchin?
It's a little fishy.
Where is the Kristen Sinema? Where is the people who are not tied to party leadership or personality and are willing to buck for the right reasons?
It tells us we have a democracy in terms of leadership style, and those characters don't have the resolve or the gumption or the stamina to speak up and speak out. They're followers.
But guys, here's the thing, and I want to make this point abundantly clear, because you say leadership. Okay. And the thing is, there's a lot of slings and arrows being shot at majors and captains and that kind of stuff. And I caution not only you guys, but also the audience to understand something. All right. You kind of got to give the command staff, captains and majors, you kind of got to give them a little bit of a pass, because they are serving underneath a tyrant. This guy is not allowing, the things that they know how to do. So guys like Devon Adams, guys like Rob Gavin, captains like George Gundage, Alex Tobar, these guys are very, very well equipped to run a police department. All of them. They have the experience. They have the knowledge. Now, there's questionable personnel things over the years, and we could get into that for days. But I'm telling you, there is leadership in that police department, but they're not being allowed to leave, and they're not being allowed to lead, and they're not being able to lead and be effective in their positions because of the chief that sits on top of them.
Right. I specifically we need a new chief. Right.
I think the first step, fire the chief and let's get a Savannah chief in there. And there's a lot of candidates, not only in the police department, but if you look out to Chatham County, there are some candidates there, guys who have been policing in this area, understand this area very, very well. They understand the city of Savannah. They understand policing strategies that will work in this city. Bringing in somebody from outside at this point, I think, is counterproductive, because you can come with all your ideas and all that kind of stuff. But, Savannah's one of those cities. If you're not born in Savannah, you ain't from Savannah. And it's not very welcoming. But, guys with 20 to 25 years of law enforcement experience in Chatham County and the city of Savannah, they're well equipped to do it. There are people there who can do it. They're just not being allowed to. So I don't want to blame the entire command structure, even though the survey is saying that. But, you got privates talking about generals, okay? And privates have no idea what it's like to be a general. And in full candor, I was never an administrator. I had no rank in the police department other than detective. I was a street guy, and I don't understand the politics that happen at captain, major levels. However, I do understand how to reduce crime, and so do guys like the ones that I just mentioned. Give them the chance to police, and then the next step is the culture absolutely has to change. You have to get you're going to have to implement some policies and change things. The old way of doing things has to go out. There is no lateral. You can't hire lateral. So if you got a sergeant from NYPD or Chicago PD or anything like that, and you bring them to Savannah, they have to start as a patrolman by policy. There's no credit for that unless they're appointed as a major. But, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, that policy needs to change. It needs to change immediately. And that's going to hurt morale, because guys who have been under the department struggling for years, to have a guy come in from, NYPD and get put in a sergeant slot that he feels he could have been, or she feels they could have been promoted to. At this point, you need the experience. The department hurts so bad that we need to get it from outside sources, get it. But the command and the chief needs to understand this city. It needs to come from within.
Okay. So more solutions. Okay. Since we can never get more than, since we can never hold more than 100 down from the budgeted number. Like, again, we're budgeted for 624 sworn officers. We only have like 530 right now. Right. And since, Kevin, we all agree on the researched number of officers per 1,000 served numbers, right? We all agree on those common academically researched principles. Let's budget the Savannah Police Department for 780 sworn officers. Because if we budget them for 780 and we miss it by 100, we'll have 680 officers, which for 200,000 people served would be right at 3.4 officers per 1,000 served, which might give us a chance. Now, to address your just recent point, I think it's important about the experience level. I think all of these newer police officers we're getting without the experience, I think half of their first year's shifts should be spent patrolling the downtown tourist destination that everybody here cares so much, so that we get that police coverage there. And the more experienced officers can go out into the community and build relationships, so we have intelligence and community policing, and maybe 2 shifts a week, that person from downtown who's brand new rotates in and gets some experience with more experienced officers. I'm not saying that I know the answers here, but clearly we have to get more bodies, and clearly we have to balance between protecting the downtown area and actually policing the rest of the city.
Let Kevin respond, and then I want to go to solution number 1.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I think your perception is a little bit incorrect there. It's not like the police department is massing a number of officers in the downtown tourism area to protect it more than any other. That doesn't happen. That's not the case. Okay, it's not the number of officers per se. It gets massed during special events like St. Patrick's Day and parades and that kind of stuff. But the number of officers spread out. It's just, you just don't have enough people to cover the beats. 12-hour shifts. So guys are working, 3-4 days in a row, 12-hour shifts, probably more than that on overtime. But what happens when you need to take a day off? Your shift's already short. Or what happens is people get assigned to specialized units, but they maintain a number on the patrol roster. So those numbers are not good either. You know, you have to get new officers need to be with experienced officers. That's how you learn. You go out there, you know, I learned from some of the best officers, and I had great leadership. I could never cry about any of the leadership that I had in the police department, because they developed not only me, but they developed, you know, the guys around me, the guys and girls around me, to be better officers. You know, the experience was always there, and we could always tap into that. The problem is most of that experience is gone. It's been run off. It started before Chief Minner. I have to say that, but it's been terrible since he's
accelerated. Sure. Okay. Make a long story short. We got to put more money in the police budget. So the question becomes, from a policy basis, where do we get that money? Obviously, we could just raise property taxes. That's not my solution. My first solution is to renegotiate the hotel motel tax split with the Chamber of Commerce Visit Savannah. And if we were to cut their budget in half, and personally, I think the pump is already primed, and we don't need to spend $11 or $12 million a year advertising Savannah. People are coming by word of mouth now. It's a tipping point that you
prettiest city in the country.
Exactly. So if we clawed back half of what they take in, we'd have an additional roughly $6 million. That would hire 75 new officers. Who pays for that? The visitors pay for that.
Hotel stairs.
Yeah. So, and Kevin, I'm using a cost of $80,000 a year generalized for rank and file. Is that a fair number with all the COLA and FICA and pension and whatnot?
Yeah, I think so. And the thing is, you know, if you look at the survey again, a lot of the problems are equipment. That's a newer problem. I want to say that's a problem from when the city and county demerged. All right. I think we really need to second guess that action, you know, the power struggle there. But, you know,
believe it or not, John, go ahead, Kevin, go ahead.
No, what we lost there was a lot of experience. We lost a lot of money. It was a power struggle. And the only people that have suffered are the citizens of the city of Savannah.
Gotcha.
Chatham County's done out, because I got to tell you, that police department is flourishing, doing well. It's well run. You know, those guys get what they need to do their job, and they go out and they do a very good job. And the officers in the city of Savannah go out and they bust their ass to do a great job. They're just not being given what they need to do the job, and that's crying shame.
Okay, John, I just want to mention, we're only looking for about $12.5 million to meet the gap in number of officers needed to hit that 3.4 number. I just want to point that out.
And I want to clarify before I go to a second suggestion to generate revenue. On the first suggestion of taking back from the 11 or 12 million that we give the Chamber of Commerce Visit Savannah, I'm not saying they shouldn't get anything. Okay, it's not binary. It's not either or. I would think that the Visit Savannah Chamber organization can run just as effectively at $5 million or $6 million than they can at $11 or $12 million. The need is not there anymore. Savannah is on the map. So it's just natural to redeploy your assets to where you have a greater need. And what we're talking about is job one, public safety. Okay, idea number two, policy number two is impact fees should be instituted on all new construction. If you just take a fourth or a fifth of the projected revenue from impact fees on new construction, my estimate is about $4.5 million would go into the public safety bucket, along with Parks and Recreation and drainage. So that's the equivalent at $80,000 of 57 new officers. Who's paying this in the impact fees? It's people who are moving here.
New residents,
new hotels, new construction. You build 250 new homes. The people that chose to come here, it's a cost of coming here. These increases should not be borne by the existing population. We need to find ways to find it elsewhere. Okay. Idea number 3 is something we've been talking about for a long time, and that's negotiating, and Van's very good at negotiating, a pilot program with the Savannah College of Art and Design.
that's right.
And if they just charged students $67 a quarter on top of the $60,000 a year tuition bill, it's nothing, Kevin. It's a barely a particle in the mass of the thing. Okay. The city would probably get $2.5 million a year, which is the equivalent of hiring 31 more officers. Who pays for this? Again, that's kind of up to SCAD. It's in their wheelhouse. They could add it onto the tuition bill as a cost coming to SCAD,
Or pass it on to their students.
Pass it on to their students, or they could absorb it.
Or maybe Paula could pay it out of her salary.
Those
aren't exorbitant numbers.
No, they're really not, Kevin. Well, we're not talking about a ridiculous amount of money. The city's budget all in was $480 some million for this year. So, we're not talking about a ton of money here. It's about political will, right? And political courage. And, you mentioned, and I really wish I had the video of Alderman Pertee from the 6th District, because John McMaster's, it reminds me of former 3rd District Alderman John Hall famously saying in an election year, well, we don't have a crime problem in the 3rd District. Yeah. And all of his 3rd District residents at a town hall literally going, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
It's such a disconnect. And like you guys said, if they just be honest if we're honest about what the problems are, we can come up with honest and effective solutions. And you guys are talking about money and where these millions of dollars can come from. You're talking way over my head. I'm just a dumb street cop. But the thing is you and I absolutely we agree the number of police officers will directly affect the thing. Because that way, if you have the number of cops on the street, then with the experienced leadership and intelligent decision making of where to effectively employ different strategies and assign personnel that know exactly what they're doing. Like, you don't take a guy like Kevin Grogan and put him in a traffic unit, okay? Because I don't know shit about traffic. I don't know how to, just because you have a badge and gun doesn't mean you know how to do things. There are different strengths that different people have. But you put people who know about violent crime, plug them into the units. And, the one guy that I've talked to over the last couple of years that actually knows about gangs in Savannah, Minter ran him off too. He went back down to Jacksonville. And this is a dude who actually had an understanding of what's going on in the street. And what hurts our police department the most with this turnover is when he leaves, that intelligence leaves. When guys like Rob Santoro are run up, the hardest working detective at this department. And, I love me some me. And I used to pride myself on my work ethic. My work ethic was shit compared to Rob Santoro. That guy, ate and worked. And the only reason he left, Chief Roy Minter. And that's, that right there should be enough for us to go, whoa, what the hell is happening? But you put the right guys with the right skill set in the right positions, and then you start seeing things with crime. But you can't do that unless you're adequately staffed.
Yeah, but look, I just want to make this point, and then maybe we can make closing comments. You got a 160-page report here that is a direct commentary from 255, basically half of the police department, one half of the police department. The number one thing that they tell us candidly is we are short-staffed.
Maybe we should listen.
Yeah, if it's a dollars and a policy issue, Chuck and I, are just know enough to be dangerous, but not expert. There are viable policy options to fund what we need. That is what we're lacking. What 255 officers say desperately, please, please, please give us the manpower to do our jobs correctly. So it is possible. Any of the three things I suggested does not impact $1 to local residents who are already paying their fair share. And I sure appreciate you coming on and help keeping us in the middle of the road and not out on the guardrails, Kevin.
No, John, here's the thing. I agree with everything that you just said, except it's a little bit more than just policy. More important to the retention of these officers is the culture. The culture in the police department, which is at an all-time, it's so toxic. And really, you can only blame the guy at the top for that.
Gotcha.
John, I just want to say that above those three specific policies, I mean, I do think we should pay our, especially with all due respect to command staff, we should pay our officers more, the ones who are on the street. We just rounded out with ARPA money, a budget where we finally got all city employees to $15 an hour. And there's some comments in this survey about how, that equated to an 8.5% raise for those at the bottom. Now, you and I, John, would of course argue, hey, we've been underpaying the city clerks for a long time. They needed to get paid more. But I also would like to acknowledge the issue that the rank and file officers on the street are not being paid enough. And if we pay them more, we have the right to expect more. That's just my general principle.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think we're paying our rank and file police officers enough to really be expecting, given all of the intense pressure and variables we have seen. Just as a side note, I see a lot of comments about the DA's office. Guys, we've been talking about this for weeks now. There is a structural problem in the judicial system that is bigger than just one DA. Okay. You had the whole court system shut down for over a year because of the Supreme Court order. There's just a lot of pressures on the system, and state action is needed. Local action is needed. But above all, citizen action is needed. So I just want to say I really appreciate we carried a live audience between 60 and 80 people across 3 platforms this last hour. So there's a lot of people very interested in this topic, Kevin. So I want to give you a chance to kind of close out some round out thoughts here for us before we end the episode.
No, Chuck, thanks again. And I love the fact that you and I, we don't agree on everything and we can hash it out. But the important things are, of course, paying police officers more is going to help, again, because, there's the expectation that you pay them more, you get a higher quality officer. The thing is with police work, as kind of similar in the military, it's not about the money. Okay. You give them incentives. And that's a huge thing. I was trying to talk about the culture in the police department. They've done away with ranks like APO. We used to have a PEP, performance enhanced pay and that kind of stuff. In the Army, you have counseling statements monthly. Okay. So you get an evaluation from your first line supervisor, let you know how you're doing, where you can improve and those kind of things. That doesn't happen in the Savannah Police Department, and it needs to. You need to tell their officers they're doing a good job when they're doing a good job. You need to tell officers where they're weak so they can improve. And when you tell them they're weak, you need to provide the training for them to improve upon their weaknesses. The other thing is you have to give them incentive. They have to feel appreciated. They have to feel like they can go someplace. We haven't had a police chief in Savannah from the only one was Willie Lovett, and that one ended the way it ended, but the thing is those guys have to have a hope to rise in their own business because they're vested in this city. Okay. And this city, regardless of what we say, this city loves its police officers. And, I have all the respect in the world for the men and women that still go out and do this under the intense scrutiny that we see as a nation under the horrible conditions that have been created by their current police chief. And they still go out every day, and not for money, but they go out with a sense of duty, and they go out and they protect us, and they do the best we can. We as a city are failing our officers, and we really need to correct that.
John, you want to end this on a good positive note?
Well, Chuck, if anything, my hope tonight, and I greatly appreciate Kevin's commentary in straightening certain things out for us, because we've never done what he's done. My hope is that our viewers and the people who will take this in will understand that the city of Savannah has a huge crisis at the police department. It is borne out by their own survey. That's kind of hard to disregard, is my hope, Chuck and Kevin. I'm hoping that people will learn and think about this problem and communicate it amongst themselves and to their neighbors and to their elected officials, to say, please stop equivocating. Just recognize the problem and deal with it. We'll find the money. We'll make it happen. But let's do it honestly. Let's address the real problems and fix it. So that's my hope.
No, we can't fix the problem if we're not being honest. We can't fix it if we're not being honest about what it is. And the thing is, guys, May 22nd, my new book Ruffian is coming out. I'll have a launch shortly thereafter. I'd love to see you guys there. One, because I love the back and forth, and two, and I do want to make this one point. Okay, the huge issue is crime. It's not, the police department's a big issue, but the big issue in this city is violent crime. All right, and we have to treat that with the utmost urgency. All right, violent crime in this city is out of control. And the thing is, I see these bills that are being proposed to let everybody carry guns. The last thing the city of Savannah and the state of Georgia needs is more guns. Guns hurt people. They kill people in the hands of wrong people. I'm not talking about law-abiding citizens who always play by the rules. They're not the ones that but we don't need to interest you. You can't drive out hate with hate. You drive it out with love. You can't fix violence with more violence. And you're not going to solve the gun problem by adding more guns to the problem.
Again, it's just amazing how we'll agree on some things and disagree on others, because we agree on this. I think we should leave the wild, wild west back in the 1800s.
Hey, maybe we could get city council to do the same thing. Agree on the things you agree on and disagree on the things you disagree about. Talk about it, have an open conversation instead of just voting. This is the way the mayor's voting, so I'm going to vote that way too.
Unfortunately, that's not how power works in our city right now. It's how it should work. But I just want to say, as we close out, there's a very large audience watching tonight. If you're new to our page, our channel, please go and enjoy some more of our episodes. This is episode 80 of our podcast. We've had our social media. This organization has been working since 2019. So coming into our rounding out our third year almost. And we've had some successes. We've had some failures. I popped up the Savannah Morning News, 3 or 4 articles about SCAD, with a lot of references to our pilot program that we pitched in December with several elected officials from the county, the city, and the school board. Yep. So, there's just a lot of content on here. We are an independent political expenditure committee registered in the state of Georgia. So we only advocate in state and local elections. And so, hopefully we'll be getting some endorsements out for this election season. But, it's a lot tougher than in the past, because I think, we learned our lesson of just endorsing as many candidates as possible. We've had candidates who spoke about these policies and then have gone into these seats and not followed up on them and not tried to get them passed. So we want to make sure that we get, a good set of candidates this year across a lot of different races. So you guys can email us at bettersavannah2021@gmail.com. If you have other information you want to get to us for synthesizing and review for future episodes, and if you're a candidate trying to get in touch with us, that's a great way as well. BetterSavannah2021@gmail.com. John, what do you got?
Call out our affiliates and friends.
Yeah. I mean, look, ATR is a great network, for independent media. The Watchdogs on Saturday is a great show that we like.
They've got like a dozen shows.
They've got a bunch of shows, but particularly if you're looking for like good local political commentary, along kind of the lines that you saw tonight, RG and Julius do a great job over there. Candidly Keisha on Mondays with Keisha Gibson Carter to get kind of the minority viewpoint of counsel from someone not in the majority. The Savannahian.com, who was the first, real media outlet to break this story this morning. Rachel, Jim, and Sean over there, always happy to give them a shout out as well. And of course, Pastor Leonard Small on Saturday afternoons around 5 or 6 p.m. usually. He's the pastor of Litway Baptist Church and one of the leaders of the Weeping Time Coalition, which of course we support the coalition's effort to save every piece of that land as much as possible, from the largest slave sale ever in the history of America happened right here in West Savannah. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Like I said, please go click some more of our content, get a good idea of what we've been following and trying to do. Kevin, can't thank you enough for coming back on. Please tell us the details about the book. We'll be happy to show up and get our signed copy for whenever you're on CNN in 10 years.
Chuck, like you said, we don't agree on everything, but I love, especially in this day and age, that we can get on, talk back and forth about some tough issues. And you guys are definitely not afraid to take on those tough issues. I appreciate what you do, even if I don't always agree with what you're doing. You guys really are here, and I know your intentions are to make Savannah better. And that's, like I said, I love this city. I think it's the prettiest in the country. I admire your guys' guts for getting up and saying things that a lot of people don't want to hear, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week with some more candidates for school board and state house and senate and stuff. We'll be in touch. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.